Story 1. I booked the place because I was desperate to get out of the city. The burnout had been building for months, late nights at work, noise bleeding through my apartment walls, endless notifications, and when I finally reached the point where I caught myself Googling how to disappear for a week without quitting your job, I knew I needed a break. The Airbnb listing wasn't spectacular, but it had the magic combination. Cheap, remote, and available on the exact days I wanted. The photos showed a creaky old farmhouse, wooden floors, lace curtains, a heavy quilt on the bed, a little library nook with a rocking chair. The description was vague: historic home, over 150 years old, surrounded by nature. Peaceful, private. No exterior photos, just close-ups of rooms. I didn't think much of it, probably to keep people from doxing the place. The host name was Margaret. Her profile picture was just a blurry shot of some flowers, but she had dozens of positive reviews. Everyone said the same thing. Perfect getaway. So quiet, you'll sleep like a baby. I messaged her. She confirmed my booking and sent me detailed driving instructions, warning me that GPS sometimes got confused out there. She wasn't kidding. By the time I got close, the cell signal was gone, and my little blue dot on the map had frozen miles back. I followed her directions, turned left at the fork with the broken fence, follow the dirt road past the 3 mailboxes. Keep going until the trees clear. The trees didn't so much clear as pull back slightly, enough for a pale shape to emerge from the shadows. The house. It was bigger than I'd expected. 2 stories, weathered white paint, shutters hanging askew. One upstairs window glowed with faint yellow light. There were no other cars in sight. The front steps groaned under my weight. The key was exactly where Margaret said it would be, in a rusted lockbox nailed to the porch railing. I let myself in. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Not bad, exactly, but layered. Old wood, dust, maybe faint mildew, and something metallic underneath, sharp enough to taste on the back of my tongue. The living room looked like the pictures. Floral sofa, faded rug, a fireplace choked with ashes. On the coffee table sat a large leather-bound guest book with yellowed pages. A handwritten note propped against it said, "We love hearing about your stay. Please leave a note before you check out." I didn't open it yet. The kitchen was small but functional. The fridge was stocked with bottled water and a carton of eggs. The cupboards held mismatched plates and mugs, and a glass jar of sugar with clumps hardened at the bottom. Upstairs, the bedroom had a heavy quilt tucked tight across the mattress. The only light came from a single lamp with a scorched shade. The rocking chair sat in the corner, facing the window. The air felt heavier here, like it hadn't been stirred in a while. That first night I couldn't sleep. It wasn't noise, there wasn't any. No wind, no crickets, no distant hum of traffic. Just the kind of silence that presses against your eardrums until you start imagining sounds. I woke up several times with the distinct, certain feeling that someone was standing next to the bed. The hairs on my arm would lift, my pulse would hammer, and I'd open my eyes to see nothing but shadow. Eventually, exhaustion won. The next day passed without much incident. I made coffee, read in the nook, took a walk along the tree line. The barn behind the house was padlocked, but a wide crack in the wood let me peek inside. It wasn't farm equipment. It was furniture. Stacks of it, dressers, armoires, headboards, all arranged in a strange circle, and mirrors. Dozens of mirrors, all angled inward toward the center of the barn. My breath fogged the glass and I stepped back quickly, unsettled by the thought of my own reflection staring at me from so many directions. Back in the house, curiosity finally got the better of me. I opened the guest book. The first pages were cheerful visitors thanking Margaret, mentioning the peace and quiet, complimenting her banana bread. Then the tone shifted. One entry in rushed, messy handwriting said, "Don't stay upstairs after midnight. No explanation, no name." A few pages later, "He comes when the rocking chair moves on its own." Another, "Check the mirrors." The rest were fragmented phrases, words scratched over so hard the paper had torn. I closed the book. That night I was determined not to let my imagination run wild. I read until my eyes ached, then switched off the lamp. Sometime after midnight, I woke to a faint creak. The rocking chair was moving. Slow, deliberate arcs forward and back. No wind, no vibration. The air was still and heavy. I stared, every muscle locked. It stopped. And in the window behind it, in the reflection, something moved. Not in the room, in the glass. A tall shape, too thin, standing where someone would be if they were right beside my bed. I fumbled for my phone. No service. When I looked back, the chair was still again empty. The next day I packed my bag. My plan was to drive into town, find a cafe with Wi-Fi, and message Margaret to say something had come up. But when I went downstairs, the guest book was open on the coffee table. I hadn't touched it. The page was blank, except for 3 fresh words written in sharp, wet ink. Stay one more. My heart pounded so hard I felt it in my teeth. I grabbed my keys. When I stepped outside, the driveway was empty. My car was gone. I stood there for a long time, staring at the ruts where the tires had been, before slowly turning back toward the house. From the upstairs window, the rocking chair moved. That last night is a blur. I don't remember eating, or turning off the lights, or getting into bed. I only remember waking at 3:17 a.m. to find the quilt pulled halfway to the floor, and the sound of something pacing the room in slow, dragging steps. I kept my eyes shut. I don't know how long I lay there before I heard the creak of the rocking chair again, and a voice low, right at my ear, whispered, "Check the mirrors." I did. Every mirror in the house, in the bathroom, behind the bedroom door, even a small hand mirror on the dresser showed me standing there. But in each reflection, my mouth was open. My eyes were too wide. My hands were moving toward me, reaching from the inside of the glass. I ran to the barn. I don't know why. Maybe some part of me thought the mirrors there would be different. They weren't. Every single one showed me, but my reflection wasn't matching my movements anymore. It was smiling. The next morning, my car was back in the driveway. The keys were on the kitchen counter. I didn't look in the guest book. I didn't clean up. I just drove. When I reached the main road and finally got cell service, I pulled over to message Margaret. The listing was gone. Her account didn't exist anymore. That was 3 weeks ago. Last night I was brushing my teeth before bed when I noticed something in the bathroom mirror. My reflection was holding a pen, and it was writing in a book I couldn't see. Story 2. I booked the Airbnb because I wanted to disappear for a while. Not forever, just long enough to let my life untangle itself. Work had been eating me alive. My relationship had ended messily, and the constant noise of the city felt like it was pressing against my skull. The listing was for a rustic coastal inn in the off-season. The photos showed faded wallpaper, brass bed frames, and a view of the ocean from every room. The host profile was minimal, just the name Clara and a picture of a key. The reviews were strange, though. They weren't really reviews, they were just one-liners. Stayed in room 6, didn't sleep much. The tide was loud this year. Don't look at them when they knock. I thought it was some inside joke among past guests. The drive out took most of the day. The road narrowed until it became a single lane clinging to the cliffside, waves crashing against black rock below. The inn appeared around a bend 3 stories, paint weathered to gray, a porch that wrapped around the front. No other cars. The door was unlocked. Inside, the lobby smelled of salt and something faintly sweet, like overripe fruit. There was no reception desk, no host waiting to greet me, just a note taped to the wall. Welcome. Room 6 is up the stairs, end of the hall. Please keep your curtains closed at night. The hallway upstairs was dim, lit only by the last orange rays of sunset bleeding through the windows. My door had a brass number 6 nailed to it. The room inside was simple. Bed, wardrobe, desk. The curtains were already drawn, heavy and dark. I dropped my bag and went to open them, wanting to see the view. The ocean stretched out endlessly, silver in the dying light. A fishing boat bobbed far out near the horizon. I thought I saw something else. A cluster of small, pale shapes just beyond the breakers, but the light shifted and they vanished. That night, the knocking started. It was soft at first, like someone tapping their fingernail against the wood of my door. I sat up, heart thudding, listening. It stopped, then started again. 3 knocks, pause, 3 knocks. I opened the door. The hallway was empty. I left the light on after that, but every time I started to drift off, the knocking came again. Always the same pattern, always stopping when I looked. The second night, I heard voices outside my window. Not on the road beneath the window somehow, though my room was on the 2nd floor. The voices were high and thin, almost childlike, speaking a language I didn't recognize. I pressed my ear to the glass. The words rose and fell like a chant, and underneath them I thought I heard the rush of water, closer than the ocean should have been. When I peeked through the curtain, the shapes were there again, dozens of them now, just past the surf, pale, standing in the water, heads tilted toward the inn. I tried to check out the next morning, but there was no one to check out with. The lobby was empty again. The front door opened onto fog so thick I couldn't see the road. When I stepped outside, the ground felt wrong, soft like wet sand. I went back to my room. The guest book was sitting on the desk. I hadn't seen it before. The first page was covered in cramped handwriting, lines overlapping each other until they formed a dense black scrawl. The second page was clearer. They only knock for those who can hear the tide from the walls. I slammed it shut. That night, the knocking didn't stop. It was constant, frantic, as if dozens of hands were beating against the door. The voices outside the window grew louder until I could make out certain words, my name, whispered in a dozen mouths. When the curtain moved, I told myself it was the wind, but then the pale shapes were inside, pressing against the glass from the wrong side, their faces bloated and eyes black as tide pools. I didn't sleep. On the 4th day, I woke to find the guest book open on my chest. The words were different now. Open the door. The knocking started again, louder, closer. I reached for the doorknob. I'm home now, at least I think I am. The air smells like salt, and my walls are damp to the touch. At night, I hear the knocking again. Last night, I checked the window. The ocean is still there, and room 6 is waiting. Story 3. I first heard about the house because of the news. It was one of those short local crime segments they tack on near the end of the broadcast, just long enough to stick in your brain without giving you anything concrete. The anchor kept her voice low, almost apologetic, as a single photo of a smiling couple appeared on the screen. A young couple, Jasmine and Eric, failed to check out of their Airbnb in rural Vermont. The host found their belongings still in the bedroom, car parked in the driveway. No sign of struggle. Police are investigating. That was all they gave. No update the next night. Nothing in the paper except a few rehashed lines from the police press release. It stuck with me for reasons I couldn't explain. Maybe it was the stillness of the story, no break-in, no chase, no clear ending. Just 2 people who went to bed one night and never left. About a week later, I looked up Airbnbs in that area on a whim. And there it was, the exact same property, same floral wallpaper, same brass bed frame, same nightly rate. No mention of Jasmine and Eric. I sat there staring at the screen, hovering over the Book Now button. I didn't have a good reason to go, but at the time, I was in a place where good reasons weren't what decided my actions. I booked it for 3 nights. The drive out felt longer than it should have been. The paved roads thinned into cracked back roads, then into a single strip of dirt winding through skeletal trees. By the time I pulled up, dusk had turned everything the color of rust. The house was unremarkable. White clapboard siding, a porch that sagged in the middle, 2 rocking chairs that swayed slightly in the breeze, though the air was still. The front yard was nothing but hard-packed dirt, and the driveway where a single truck sat idling. The man in the truck stepped out when I parked. Mid-50s, wiry build, eyes that didn't quite match the smile he offered. His name was Peter. "Long drive?" he asked. His voice had a dry, brittle quality, like a twig snapping. "A bit," I said, handing over my booking info on my phone. He didn't even glance at it. just handed me a brass key with a frayed red tassel attached. "Don't be late for checkout," he said. "Noon sharp." I chuckled, assuming it was a joke about his cleaning schedule, but his face stayed flat, like I hadn't gotten the punchline. Inside, the smell hit me first. It was lemon cleaner, the cheap kind that leaves a chemical tang in your throat, but beneath it was something damp and sweet, like fruit left too long in a warm cupboard. The hallway walls were covered in faded floral wallpaper. On the right side hung a large wall calendar with neat black pen marks, names, check-in dates, checkout dates. Every single day was filled in. Except 1 week, the week Jasmine and Eric stayed. That space was completely blank, a neat white gap in an otherwise meticulous record. Peter showed me to my room at the end of the hall, second door on the left. The brass doorknob was polished to a shine, and a thin scratch ran in a perfect circle around it, like someone had spun the lock too many times. Inside, the room looked exactly like the listing photos. Floral wallpaper, lace curtains, a writing desk in the corner. The quilt on the bed was tucked tight, corners squared like a hotel. As I set my bag down, I noticed something odd about the desk. One of the drawers, the bottom right, was locked, but a torn piece of paper stuck out from the side, wedged in just enough to be impossible to miss. I slid it free. The paper was soft from being handled, the pencil handwriting jagged and urgent. "Don't open the door." That night, the footsteps woke me. Slow, deliberate, measured floorboard groans traveling down the hallway. My first thought was that Peter was doing a late-night check on the place, but the steps stopped outside my room. I lay there, breath shallow, eyes fixed on the thin strip of light under the door. Nothing moved. The stillness stretched on so long that I started to think I'd imagined it. Then after what must have been 10 minutes, the shadow under the door shifted and was gone. I didn't sleep again until dawn. The second night, it started earlier. 1:48 a.m. This time there was a knock. 3 slow, soft raps. I froze. The knock came again, louder, the kind of sound you feel in your ribs. By the third round, it was pounding, the door frame rattling, the brass knob twitching like it might turn on its own. I almost yelled for them to stop. That scrap of paper's warning burned in my mind. Don't open the door. Then silence. I waited, every muscle locked, until I heard it, a faint squelch underfoot. The sound of someone walking away on soaked carpet. When I opened the door in the morning, the hallway was empty. But the rug outside my room was wet in the shape of bare feet. Each print pointed toward my door. On the third night, I didn't even try to sleep. I sat in the desk chair, staring at the door, waiting. At 1:37 a.m., the footsteps began. But they didn't stop at my room this time. They moved past, down the hallway, down the stairs, into the kitchen. I heard drawers sliding open, the metallic clink of utensils. And then, unmistakable, the sound of the front door unlocking. I crept to the window and eased the curtain aside. Peter was standing in the driveway, but he wasn't alone. 2 figures stood with him, their clothes sodden, water dripping from hair that clung to their faces. Even from that distance, I recognized them, Jasmine and Eric. They weren't smiling like in the photo. I checked out before sunrise, the keys set on the kitchen counter, next to the wall calendar. I almost walked past it, but something made me stop. The dates for my stay were already filled in, but tomorrow, the day after my scheduled checkout, had my name written in black ink. Beneath it, in neat capital letters, was one word: stay. 3 days later, the listing was gone. Peter's profile was deleted. But last night at 1:37 a.m., I woke to the sound of footsteps in my hallway. And this time, the wet carpet smell was already inside the room,